Did you know there's a drug being used en masse by teenagers 14, 15, 16 years old, and almost nobody is talking about it with the seriousness it deserves? We're not talking about something hidden in back alleys or sold in the shadows. We're talking about something being discussed openly on social media, celebrated, encouraged, and even romanticized. Today's topic is the epidemic of anabolic steroid use, and it's far more serious than you might think. A documentary produced in the United Kingdom revealed a statistic that shocked a lot of people. Anabolic steroids are the second most used drug among teenagers. Second. That means, when it comes to youth consumption, they're only surpassed by one other substance. Let that sink in for a moment. We're talking about synthetic hormones, substances that directly interfere with how the body functions, being used by kids and teenagers who are still in the middle of their physical and mental development. And what makes this situation even more alarming is the role social media plays in all of it. Open any platform today, and it won't take long before you're seeing posts, videos, and stories encouraging the use of these substances, often with a casual, laid-back tone, as if it's completely normal. Young people posting about their cycles, comparing results, recommending suppliers. A reality that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago is now just a few clicks away from any teenager with a phone in their hand. So why do we need to talk about this right now? Because silence and the lack of quality information are fuel that allows this problem to keep growing. Throughout this video, we're going to dive deep into this topic, understanding the root causes, the risks, and the role that culture, social media, and influencers play in this story. Stay until the end, because every part of this content was crafted to give you a complete and honest picture of what's really going on. And if you know someone who needs to see this, start thinking about hitting that share button. Think about this for a second. Who was the first hero that really stuck with you as a kid? Goku going Super Saiyan, He-Man raising his sword, the Hulk bursting with muscle, Superman with that commanding physique? Doesn't matter what generation you're from, most of us grew up being introduced to figures of power that all had one thing in common: big, muscular bodies that seemed absolutely unstoppable. That wasn't a coincidence. That pattern was repeated so many times, across so many different formats, that it ended up embedding itself deep in our minds as a symbol of strength, respect, and value. The problem is, that ideal didn't stay in the cartoons. It evolved. And in today's world, bodybuilders occupy exactly the space that superheroes once held. They're the ones showing up on screen with monumental physiques that seem to push the limits of what the human body can do. For a lot of young people, seeing a famous bodybuilder is the real-life, attainable version of that childhood hero. And that's when the thought creeps in, if he did it, so can I. The desire to get closer to that ideal is completely understandable. The danger lies in the path some people choose to get there. Social media poured gasoline on that fire. What used to be confined to niche magazines or specialized competitions is now showing up in the feed of any teenager who's never even set foot in a gym. Shredded physiques, perfectly lit photos, intense training videos, all of it creates a silent, constant pressure. The message that comes through, even without words, is crystal clear: this is the standard. This is what you should look like. And the more the algorithm keeps serving up that kind of content, the harder it becomes to escape that bubble. Have you ever looked back at a decision you made as a teenager and thought, what was I thinking? Well, the answer might have less to do with a lack of character and more to do with biology. Science has proven that the human brain doesn't finish developing in childhood. In fact, the most important part for rational decision-making, the prefrontal cortex, located in the frontal region of the brain, doesn't reach full maturity until around age 25. That means teenagers literally don't yet have the complete neurological equipment to clearly assess risk. And here's where the dangerous imbalance kicks in. While the region responsible for reasoning is still under construction, the brain's reward system, the one that processes pleasure, instant gratification, and excitement, is already running at full throttle. It's like having the gas pedal floored with only half a brake. The result? A teenager feels desire with full intensity, but has less capacity to pump the brakes and think through the consequences. It's not weakness, it's not stupidity, it's physiology. Now put that into the context we've already been discussing: a 15 or 16-year-old, bombarded by images of perfect bodies on social media, idolizing athletes who use steroids, and on top of that dealing with peer pressure. Their brain is screaming, "I want results now," while the part that's supposed to say, "Hold on, think about the consequences," is still being built. That's an explosive combination. And that's exactly why teenagers are the most vulnerable group in this entire story. Understanding that isn't an excuse, it's a responsibility. A responsibility that falls on parents, educators, healthcare professionals, and also the content creators who hold these young people's attention. Let's be real, fitness influencers have brought a lot of good to the table. How many people do you know who started working out, eating better, sleeping more consistently, and paying attention to their hydration because of some athlete they follow on social media? That positive impact is real, and it can't be overlooked. When used well, that kind of reach is a powerful tool for encouraging healthy habits and genuinely changing lives. The problem starts when that same power is used irresponsibly, and unfortunately, that happens with a frequency that's deeply troubling. It's no secret that a large portion of the bodybuilders dominating social media use anabolic steroids. What's shocking, however, is how casually many of them openly recommend these substances to their followers, the majority of whom are young people still figuring out who they are. And it gets worse, many of these influencers are sponsored by brands that produce their products in underground labs, completely outside of any health regulations or quality control. In other words, they're getting paid to push illegal and potentially lethal substances onto their own audience. And here's a statistic that should stop everyone in their tracks. Police seizure reports revealed that when products from a well-known brand in the community were tested, 80% of the samples were contaminated. 8 out of every 10 samples. Contaminated. We're talking about substances that are injected directly into the bloodstream. Think about what that risk actually looks like: severe infections, allergic reactions, permanent organ damage, and in extreme cases, death. All while the influencer smiles at the camera and assures everyone that the product is top quality. So the question that demands an answer is this: to what extent does someone with that level of influence also bear responsibility for what happens to their followers? Anabolic steroid use has gone from taboo to everyday conversation. That's not an exaggeration. In many gyms across the country, it's common to find syringes in locker rooms, people injecting themselves with the same casual attitude as someone taking a pre-workout supplement. What should raise red flags has become routine, and that's exactly where the danger lives. When something serious starts to feel normal, people stop questioning it, and it's in that silence that the risks keep growing. But the normalization doesn't stop there. It found a powerful ally: humor. Phrases like "only plants grow naturally" have turned into memes that spread by the thousands across social media, getting laughs and likes. On the surface, it seems like just a joke. But what these memes actually do is send a very clear message: training without steroids is a waste of time, it's for the naive, it's for people who aren't serious about getting results. That idea, repeated over and over in the form of humor, gradually embeds itself in people's minds, especially younger people, as if it were an absolute truth. And the consequences are very real. Anyone who decides not to use steroids starts facing genuine social pressure. They get labeled as the clean kid, the purist, the one who doesn't actually want to grow. In environments where steroid use is the norm, social exclusion can be a powerful trigger, especially for teenagers who are still building their identity and desperately need to feel accepted. The line between a free choice and a choice driven by peer pressure gets thinner and thinner, and many end up giving in not because they truly want to, but simply to belong. Up to this point, we've talked about culture, social pressure, and influence. But now it's time to look at the hardest part of the story: the real consequences that anabolic steroid use can have on the human body. And when I say real, I'm not talking about theory or rare scare tactic cases. I'm talking about documented situations, about people who started out exactly like many of you watching this video, young, motivated, full of goals, who ended up paying way too high a price for a decision made without enough information. The risks go far beyond acne or mood swings, which are the side effects most commonly mentioned on the surface. Steroid use, especially without medical supervision and with products from questionable sources, can cause severe infections at the injection site that escalate quickly and can lead to necrosis, meaning the death of tissue. Cases of limb amputation resulting from these infections have already been documented. And in extreme situations, the outcome is death. Not as an exception, not as an exaggeration, as a real consequence of a choice made without a full understanding of the risks involved. And here's an aggravating factor we touched on briefly earlier that deserves your full attention: where these products actually come from. As we've already seen, a large portion of the steroids being used come out of underground labs, with zero quality control, zero oversight, and zero guarantee of what's actually inside that vial. Products contaminated with bacteria, wrong dosages, adulterated substances, all of it goes straight into the bloodstream of whoever injects it. The body doesn't forgive that kind of assault, and the damage caused is often irreversible. What's most concerning about this whole equation is the way these risks are systematically downplayed. In fitness circles, it's common to hear things like, if you do it right, it's fine, or everyone uses and they're doing great. That kind of talk is dangerous because it creates a false sense of security. A few years ago, getting your hands on anabolic steroids was a long and complicated process. You had to be in the right circles, know the right people, build trust with someone who had access, and even then, there was no guarantee of quality or safety. That barrier to access, as imperfect as it was, worked as a natural filter. The difficult road made a lot of people give up before they even got started. Today, that filter is simply gone. So what changed? Basically everything. With the rise of social media and e-commerce, anabolic steroids have become one of the easiest illegal products to get your hands on. You don't need to know anyone, you don't need to go anywhere specific. All it takes is a phone, a quick search, and a few clicks, and the product shows up at your door, packaged like any other delivery. The speed and ease with which this happens is alarming, especially when you consider that any teenager with internet access is just a few taps away from these substances. And who's opening that door? In many cases, it's the influencers themselves. Athletes with thousands, sometimes millions, of followers post supplier links directly in their Instagram bios and stories, as casually as if they were promoting a new supplement or a fresh pair of sneakers. No disclaimer, no warning, no guidance on the risks whatsoever. A recommendation from someone you look up to, with a direct link to purchase, carries enormous persuasive power, and that power is being used to sell illegal and potentially lethal substances to an audience that blindly trusts who they follow. Given everything we've discussed so far, a question comes up that has no simple answer: what role does information play in all of this? Talking openly about anabolic steroids, their effects, dosages, risks, does it help protect people, or does it end up encouraging use? That's a real tension, and any serious content creator who tackles this topic has to face it honestly. The position we take here is clear: we believe an informed person is in a far better place than an uninformed one when it comes to making a dangerous decision. And we have real examples of that. One case that stuck with us involved a student who came in with his mind made up to use one of the most aggressive substances available on the market. After watching a detailed video covering both the desired effects and, more importantly, the side effects of that specific compound, he changed his mind. Not because of preaching, not because of judgment, but because he had access to real, complete, and honest information. Knowledge did the work that no lecture ever could. That's the power of well-crafted, well-delivered content. But it would be dishonest to ignore the other side of that coin. There's a real risk that by talking about these substances in detail, we end up sparking curiosity in people who had never even thought about it. When people know more, some venture further, and that's a reality we can't pretend doesn't exist. The line between informing and inadvertently encouraging is razor thin, and it demands constant responsibility in how content is built and delivered. Good intentions aren't enough, every word matters. We've reached the end of this conversation, but before we wrap up, I want to make something very clear. Everything said here was not meant to scare you, judge you, or make you think bodybuilding is dangerous. Quite the opposite. Bodybuilding is one of the most complete and beneficial practices out there. It transforms your body, strengthens your mind, and significantly improves your quality of life. What we need to question isn't the training, isn't the dedication, isn't the pursuit of progress. What we need to question is the shortcut and the price it quietly charges from those who choose that path. It is absolutely possible to build a healthy, aesthetic physique you're proud of naturally. It might be a slower road, one that demands more patience and more consistency, but it's a sustainable path, one that respects your body and protects your long-term health. Ask yourself honestly, do you want an impressive physique for a few years while paying a heavy price on the inside, or do you want energy, health, and quality of life for decades? That answer changes everything. And only you can give it. To the influencers and content creators out there, here's a direct message: the reach you have is an enormous privilege, and privilege comes with responsibility. Recommending illegal substances, promoting underground labs, or downplaying serious risks for the sake of a sponsorship isn't just irresponsible, it's a betrayal of the trust of the people who follow you. Especially when a large part of that audience is made up of young people who are still figuring out who they are. Influencer is a powerful word. Use that power wisely. And to you, for watching all the way to the end, thank you. That tells me you took this topic seriously, and that already makes a difference. Now let me know in the comments, what did you think of this conversation? Have you ever witnessed a situation like the ones we talked about today? Do you know someone who could benefit from this content? Share this video, because the right information at the right moment can change a decision, and one decision can change a life. See you in the next one.